What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Johnny DB, and as most of you know, Lorcana the first chapter has been getting restocked at most of your local gaming stores, and on top of that, Rise of the Floodborn is about to come out. With that, we have a lot of release events that are appearing on melee.gg or your Facebook feeds or your Discord channels, and a lot of these you're probably seeing are draft and sealed, and you're just kind of like, what is that? And it's a different format, you know. And look, before you leave, I get it, you just built your constructed deck. It either took you a fortune to build or it took you 3 decades to build, and you finally got the cards. You just want to build upon that and play constructed because you just learned what that is. You don't know. But look, I promise I think these will be interesting to most of you, at least for a few reasons. There's a lot of pros to both of them, and I'll be going over that. And so if you've played other TCGs that had this, you might know like what draft and sealed is. And so for the second part of this video are going to be some tips and tricks specifically for Lorcana that will help you succeed, or hopefully help you succeed. I've been pretty successful with the drafts and seals that I have gone to, so I will have tips for that. I made a PowerPoint for you all for both, whether you know you've never played draft or sealed, you don't know what it is. We're gonna go over what they are, and then tips again for being successful. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the PowerPoint. All right, y'all, what is draft slash sealed? And they're not the same thing. They're two different formats, so we'll be going over them separately. And first we'll be going over sealed. So what is sealed? What are the rules? And before I go over everything, I want to preface with saying any event that's made, whether they call it draft or they call it sealed or constructed, technically, you know, the tournament organizers can make any rules that they want. They don't necessarily have to follow it, but this is just what your typical sealed or your typical draft is going to look like, and so I'm going to go based off of that. So anyway, we're going to start with sealed. And with sealed, what is it? How do you play? So first of all, everyone that is in the sealed event is going to get 6 packs, right? So with those 6 packs, you're going to receive, I think it's 72 cards total is what it is. 12 cards per pack. It should be 72 cards. With those 72 cards, you're going to make a 40 card deck minimum. So you can have more than 40 if you want. It's the same rule as constructed. You could have as many cards in your deck as you want, as long as you could shuffle it with your 2 hands. You can't have like a third party in helping you shuffle. Essentially, that's what it is. As long as you can hold it and you can shuffle it properly, you can play as many cards as you'd like. With that, there's no ink color requirement, so you don't have to limit yourself to 2 inks. Like, you don't have to build a deck based on, you know, you're starting to get good amber cards and good ruby cards, so now you're stuck with amber and ruby. No, you can do amber, ruby, sapphire. You can do all 6 colors, and in most cases you're probably going to have a deck that has all 6 colors because there's just good cards in every color and you just want to combine them. And lastly, there's no play set limit. So if there's a particular card that you're coming across a lot and you want more than 4 of those cards, if you don't know, in typical constructed, you're limited to only 4 of one individual card, not one individual character. But for example, if you have like an Aladdin heroic outlaw, you can only have it 4 times in constructed. If you happen to get past 5 heroic outlaws in sealed or draft, you can play 5 of them. It's not going to happen for that particular card, but I mean, that's just the example that I give, right? So in sealed, what are the pros? So going over the pros, we have, you get to keep the cards. So again, yeah, you know, for some of you that are like, why would I want to do this? You know, I've constructed, I took a while to build it, I want to play with my deck. Well, especially right now when you're trying to get your hands on some new product for Rise of the Floodborn, you get to keep all the cards that you open. So all 6 packs, you open them, they're yours. Any cards that you get. There's no meta decks. So if you are just kind of learning, if you're new to TCG, or maybe you're not as much into competitive, or maybe you're into competitive but you don't have the money to spend a fortune on all these like top tier meta decks, there are no meta decks in sealed. You get everyone gets 6 individual packs that they're building a deck off of. They cannot take cards from that they already own and add it into their decks. They can only use from the 72 cards that they have. On top of that, it's always new, right? So you can go to 10 sealed events and in 10 days, and it's always going to be new. You're going to pull different cards that are going to help. You know, there are going to maybe be particular cards that you go for more often and you're going to see in your decks because they're just generally good for these formats. but you're going to be playing different decks. You're not going to see the same cards all the time, you know. So there is one con to sealed, and that one con is unfavorable packs. And what I mean by that, it actually happened to my brother at the opening event at Gen Con when they first released the cards and they had the starter decks. They had their sealed event for the top 8 of every tournament that they held for Friday and Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and on Sunday they had like a whole sealed event, and he ended up pulling 6 packs that were not that great, like weren't great for sealed, and he ended up playing somebody who had just pulled phenomenal cards. And that's just a chance here with sealed, which is one thing that I think some of you might like draft a little more for. I've met people that like sealed more, I've met people that like draft more. It's really your preference. I know that people like sealed because if they pull a pack and it's all godlike cards, you know, then they get to keep all of them, whereas draft, it's not like that, and I'll explain that when we go over draft. But on the flip side, you know, you have the chance of not pulling the greatest cards, and then going up against people who pulled some really good cards in all 6 of their packs. So that's kind of the drawback, I guess, but it's still amazing. You get to keep all the cards, build up your collection, and just have fun in a competitive environment where not, you know people didn't spend $1,000 on their deck just to have the best deck. So next, we're moving on to draft. What is draft? Well, with draft, unlike sealed, with 6 packs, you get 4 packs with draft. Now you're going to be in a player pot of 8, and this is the typical amount of players is 8. Technically, you can have more, you can have less, but normally it is a player pot of 8, meaning there are 8 people sitting around a table. Okay, and with that, everyone will open one of their 4 packs. When whoever the organizer is for the event, when they say go ahead and open your first pack, everyone will open their first pack. So again, so first of all, don't open your packs when you get them. You know, just in case they don't tell you, do not open your packs. When they tell you to open up your first pack, you crack open one pack, you open it, you look at all 12 cards, and then you pick one. And normally the way it will work is you'll pick one from your pack, you'll pass the rest of the cards, so the other 11, down to your left. And you'll do that all the way until all of the cards have been picked up from that first pack. Then you'll start the second round of packs. You'll open up the second pack. Everyone at their table will open up a second pack. And then you'll go to the right. So you'll pick one, pass it down to the right, and then it flip-flops. It goes back to the left, and then it goes back to the right. That's normally how it goes. Again, does it really matter that way? I mean, it's a little more balanced that way, but I mean, you could do it either way. It's just that's normally how it goes. Next, same thing, 40 card deck minimum. So you can have, you're going to have 48 cards. You could use all 48 if you want, but you have to have at least 40. There's no ink color requirements. Again, same thing. You could use all 6 ink if you want, so don't worry about picking just amber, picking ruby, and then, you know, just sticking to those colors. You know, it's not like Magic in that sense. So if you play Magic, this is important, because in Magic, not that you're restricted to any specific colors, it's just not favorable since you have lands and everything. I don't need to go into that for anyone who, I don't want to get anyone confused, but either way, it's different in Magic since all your characters and cards in general can be either inked or not. It doesn't matter nearly as far as like restricting yourself to a couple colors. If you find a combination that's good with 2 colors and you want to kind of stick to that, you can, but just don't limit yourself to that. You can pick any card. And then you have no playset limit. Again, you're not restricted to only 4 of one card, right? So if you see 4 Tinkerbell giant, I'm gonna do something else, I don't know, 4 Stitch new dogs, you know, or if you see 6 of them or 7 of them and you want them for whatever reason, all of them, you can play all of them, and that's just how that goes. So what are the pros? Before I move forward, I'm cutting in here real quick. What I didn't mention is for both sealed and draft, after you build your decks, you're going to be playing in a Swiss style tournament, just meaning, if you don't know what that is, it just means that you'll be playing someone that is the same record of you. If you can, if you're 1-1, if you're 2-1, if you're 2-0, you'll play someone else who has the same record if it's possible to do so. And that's how you kind of get placed, you know, top 8 or however the structure is for the event that you're going to. But yeah, I just wanted to say that, and back to the video. The pros to draft are you get to keep the cards. Again, same thing as sealed, you get to keep all of them. Now, no meta decks, same thing. You're not playing people who have paid thousands of dollars for their decks. You get to keep some competitive aspect of the game, but it's more of a level playing field. It's always new, same thing. You'll be playing new cards again and again. Like I just said, it's a level playing field, a little more than sealed. And this is where the con comes in. You can't keep the full pack, right? So there's people that like sealed because if they pull a pack, that's great. They don't have to pick one and pass the rest of the great cards down. They get to keep them all. And draft, you pull a pack that's phenomenal and you want to keep all the cards you can't. You got to take one and then you got to move it on, which is also a situation here where it's like, do you pick a card that you just need, or do you pick a card that's good for draft? You know, maybe in your collection you need a particular card and so you opt to pick that one versus picking something that's better for your actual draft. I don't think it's that big of a deal if I mean, especially later in the game when you kind of have your cards and you've played a lot and you have a lot in your collection, you don't need to worry about it as much. In the beginning, you might be, you know, kind of picking and choosing based on that. Obviously, I would imagine if you get an enchanted, you take that. I mean, I'm not going to fault anyone who doesn't. I would just say you probably should. For anyone who's like, this is a cool card, but like I want to do well in the event, you should pick the enchanted. I mean, worst case, you won the event if you get an enchanted. You won right there. And if you really don't care about it, you could sell it and then just buy a whole bunch of new cards that you didn't end up picking up in the draft, right? So just get the enchanted if you can. But aside from that, you know, that's kind of the con. If you pull a really good pack, you gotta pick one, pass it down, which is what makes it more level. Because at the same rate, on the other end of the spectrum, if you pick a pack that's terrible, you only gotta pick one, pass it down, and then maybe the person to your left or to your right that's passing it to you, maybe they had a sick pack, and then now you get to pick the remains of that one. So I think it's a little more fair in draft. I like sealed at the beginning of games. It's like pre-release. I like it because I get to keep all the cards I have. I don't have to worry about passing on cards that I wanted to keep. That's not in my mind. But later on, I like draft a lot more because where I have more of the cards, I don't need to pull specific ones for my collection. It's just more fair of a playing field, in my opinion. So anyway, before we move on, that's what draft is. That's what sealed is. That's how you play. It's really fun. If it's interesting to you, great. If it's not, then that's fine. You know, keep playing. You can play the starter deck challenges people are doing where everyone gets a starter deck and you play to win for more packs and prizes, you know, using that starter deck. So you could do that. You can just wait for your regular casual leagues or your competitive leagues. There's going to be multiplayer games that are coming. You know, if you're not playing them already, you can. But you can just tell it's going to be really fun multiplayer game in the future. Commander is the biggest game in Magic. If you don't know what that is, it's just without going too in depth with that, it's a game where you play multiplayer and you use a really big deck. Usually people play it casually and they just make fun decks that they enjoy playing with cards you wouldn't in like a competitive setting. You know, a mix of cards that you wouldn't and you would, but it just makes it really fun. So there's a lot of different formats that you can enjoy. If you just like playing the regular, straightforward, competitive constructed, then that's cool too. Then you don't got to worry about it. But yeah, so I went over the pros and cons. Now, if you're here and you're staying here, it's because you want some tips. You know, how do I win at draft? And again, I mean, some of this stuff goes hand in hand with sealed. The thing is with sealed though, since you don't pass the packs down, someone could just have a lot of really good cards and you don't have great ones. Generally speaking, I mean, you're going to see every pack that comes down. You're not going to see every card that was in that pack, obviously. But you get an idea of kind of what's going across the board. And if you want to play all evasives, you could take all the evasives that are going on in the pack. So there's different strategies to it. Whereas in sealed, you have what you have and you build from that. And someone could get an overload of like target removal, and someone could get an overload of bodyguard cards, someone could get an overload of draw cards. Like you really don't know, and you can't it's not going to get dispersed around a table of 8 different people. So that's why it's a little different. I think it's a little easier to go over draft, but a lot of these tips will be the same when it comes to sealed as well. So moving on to the tips. Tip number one, check the high rares first, right? So check your rare, super rare, and legendaries. Check the back. Those are going to be the ones that you're going to see less of. Like if you think about it, there are more commons and uncommons in the set. you're likely to see those types of cards more often later on. So yes, there may be certain commons and uncommons that are really good for draft, but in a lot of cases, like if you're coming up with, oh, there's an uncommon, this is really good for draft, and then you see like a super rare, it's like, this is really good for draft too, but maybe I don't know, because that might work well with what I'm doing. I don't know. In most cases, take that super rare, and you're gonna have a better chance of seeing that common or uncommon again later. And again, I didn't say this for the tips, but just so everyone knows, I'm going based on if you're just trying to win the draft. I am not gonna go over, you know, if you have an enchanted, then you pick that up. Like, what should you do? Should you take the enchanted or whatever? This is strictly based on if you want to like be successful. But yeah, so check your high rares first. There's less of those cards, so you're less likely to see those cards again. And so always go for those first. It seems like obvious, and yeah, I mean it is. But as you get more into sealed and draft, you'll see like how good some commons and uncommons are in those formats. So it becomes a bit harder to make decisions. But later on in the game, you know, it might be more beneficial to go with that common or uncommon. You know, you are trying to win for more packs, right? So you're trying to win for, who knows, 3, 4, 5 more packs that you're going to have. So sometimes it is good to just go for what you think will win. Next, look for important card keywords. I'm going to get into these in individual slides, so we'll come back to this. But, you know, that's going over like flying, bodyguard, and rush are 3, and resist actually is newly introduced, are 3 that are really important that you guys should be looking out for. So I'm going to go over that later in those slides specifically for that. Reverse curve drafting is what I call it, and this is really go for those power hitters early on, those heavy lore gainers, the ones that are like 5 or 6 drops, and we'll go over like kind of how I feel about how you should have a curve. But go for those higher ones first, because you're gonna get at the end of the packs, as they start to deplete and get to you, and you're starting to get to 5 cards and 4 cards, 3 cards, you're gonna see a lot of the 1-drops that you're gonna have just because you need some 1-drops to play right away, to gain board control, things like that. So just worry about those heavy hitters initially, and then as the packs start to get lower and lower and there's less options, then you can start going for those 1s and 2s, you know, unless you see a really good like 2-drop or something, then maybe you go for that. There's really no 1-drops that you really should ever go for. Captain Hook's like the best 1-drop, but I still, he's a common, so you know, with him I pass on him a lot unless it's starting to come to the end of the actual drafting process. Now, you want like an arc-like curve, right? Kind of like the Disney Magic Kingdom wand, you know, at the beginning of those Disney movies, you have the what do you call that? The tower, the Magic Kingdom castle? That I'm such an idiot, bro. What the hell? You want that kind of curve. You want a little amount of 1s and 2s. You want a little amount at the end there, like 7+ cards. You really don't want too many of those. 3s and 4s, 5s and 6s are where you're gonna have the most. I would say kind of 3, you know, again, it's an arc, so 3 kind of goes up, your 4s are up a little bit, your 5s are up a little bit, it starts to deplete for some of the 6s and things like that, you know. So that's a really nice curve, and specifically in this, there's not, I mean, unless you have ramp, and then maybe you play a little bit more high power characters. If you have like good ramp in the packs that you get, then you can play more high level characters. But I think like 3, 4, 5 is the sweet spot, with some 6s and then, you know, a couple 7s depending on what they are sprinkled in there is perfect, because a lot of the 3s and 4s quest for 2+, and the 5s and 6s, a lot of them will quest for like 2 or 3, even a lot of them will do like 3 and then have fat bodies on top of it. But the thing that's nice about 3 and 4 drops, as your inks get higher, what's really important in this game, in this format, is board state, and being able to play multiple characters at a time if you need to is important. So if you have more 3s and 4s, then you can drop more bodies on the board at one time. And there's a lot of really good cards that are just 3 and 4, and then, you know, they're not too expensive. It's just very valuable in that space there. 3, 4, 5, you get a lot of value, and then in 6 and 7 kind of plus, you're looking for like just the top dog value when you're going to pick any of those, right? So that's what my arc-like curve, that's what I mean by that. Next, you want to stay ahead on board. Again, this is what I mean by board state. It's incredibly important to have a good board state, and there's a really good combo when drafting that I'm going to go over specifically. It's going to be like a key, like 2 key cards that you'll be looking for and you'll always want in your deck because they have a sick combo that keeps you ahead on the board. And so yeah, just stay ahead on board. You know, sometimes you don't have to quest. Don't worry about questing all of the time. If it's going to be a beneficial kill, like for example, if they have a Captain Hook on the board, the 1-drop Captain Hook, and you have a Stitch New Dog, right? That's a 1-drop 2/2. You don't need to quest. If you quest, like, yeah, sure, you get 1 lore, they kill you with their hook, which means they trade out and their hook dies, but you get a lot more value if your opponent messes up and they quest with their Captain Hook, right? The point of Captain Hook is to get the value out of having a card that can kill anything with only 3 willpower, like a 1-drop. That's why Captain Hook is so strong and so good. But if he's quested, he only hurts you for 1, so you can attack with that Stitch New Dog, and then your Stitch is still on the board. Now someone has to deal with it and deal 2 damage to their other characters, unless they really want to waste a removal for it, right? But yeah, so stay ahead on board. Try to stay as ahead as possible, because then that forces your opponent to start making all the decisions and the challenges, which is going to be really hard for them in most cases. Next, check your inkable and uninkables. What I will say with this part is, like, yes, it's obvious you don't want too many uninkables. What I would say a sweet spot is like 7 or 8 uninkables. However, I would say don't go past 10. You know, 25% is kind of like how a regular constructed deck would be. 15 uninkables is really common in constructed, and in most top constructed decks, that's 25% of the deck. Same thing, 10 cards of 40. It's 25%. I would say 7 or 8 is great, but also don't undervalue your uninkables just because they're uninkable, right? If you have 7 or 8, you're coming up, you know, but you find a really, really good uninkable, then grab it, you know, a Dr. Facilier, which I'll go over, a Rafiki. Like, sometimes these are cards that will be really good for your deck, and it just makes sense for what you've built already. And so don't go too crazy over it. What I would just say is don't go past 10 probably. Stay within that range, you know, try to be around 7 to 8 at most. But yeah, so just make sure, you know, you have a good ratio in there. All right, sorry if you heard a lot of that noise. I don't know how long that would have gone for, but my room just got really hot, so I had to have the window open, and then I started hearing that and noticing it was picking up, so I'm sorry. Anyway, moving on to the next tip. Look for your high questers. So there's a lot of, like I said, once you get to 3-drop or higher, unless someone's ability is just really, really good, go for the ones that quest for high. Because in those positions where you gotta really put the pressure on your opponent, you want the ones that are going to quest high, because that's what they're going to be focusing on. And the more high questing cards that you got, the harder it is to take control, the harder it is to avoid, really. You're gonna have to focus on them, and you're gonna have to take care of them. Otherwise, it's just, you're gonna win, because you're gonna just quest to 20 faster than they do. So keep a lookout for those high questers as well. And I would say in the 1 and 2 drop section is where you can get a lot of value on just cards that don't necessarily quest for so much. I mean, Flynn is obviously a really good low cost card to have, but you have cards like Captain Hook that are really good, or like Phil, which can support and give something else a boost in their attack that could help, or sorry, a boost in their strength that could help take out somebody else that has high willpower. So there are cards in the 1 and 2 that don't necessarily need to quest for 2, and a lot of them don't, that are just more beneficial. So look out for high questers. And yeah, let's move on to those keywords, those important keywords that I was talking about. So we have evasive. Evasive is a really, really good keyword because of the fact that it can only be taken out with target removal. I mean, well, just removal in general, I should say. Not target removal, because like Be Prepared, obviously, or Grab Your Swords is big. You know, those could take out your cards. But it can only be taken out from removal or something else with evasive. And in these types of formats, especially draft, a lot of people are going to be taking the evasives because they need something to either make sure they can handle other evasives, or they want to build an evasive deck that's going to be harder to take care of them. And on top of that, a lot of the removal that you have is just, it's not the best value in something like draft or sealed. For example, Dragonfire, it's really nice to have one of them, but a 5-drop uninkable, you know, that's so much ink to use in this type of format, and that doesn't help your board state too much. Like, obviously you can get rid of a really big nasty card that your opponent has, or flying when you don't have flying, right? Or sorry, not flying, but evasive when you don't have evasive. But you're just not going to come around too much to it. So when you have evasive cards, it's going to be really hard to take care of. And so we have like Tinkerbell specifically with her. It's really good because you can give something else evasive when you play evasive. The other day, I had a Prince Eric that was on the board, and they had their own Tinkerbell. I played my Tinkerbell, put it on Prince Eric. I attacked their Tinkerbell. Now my Tinkerbell is okay. I don't need to do anything with that. I get to quest with her until my opponent has an answer for her. And so there's just little things like that, you know. Mickey Mouse, you know, these are cards that I would probably take if you have the chance. Mickey Mouse is a little bit of a tougher decision because you're not gonna, an 8 cost is really hard to get to, and if someone does have removal and pulls it when you play 8 to play Mickey Mouse, that's terrible for you. So not necessarily Mickey, but like Ray is a new card from Rise of the Floodborn that I really like. Only a 5-drop. Yeah, it's a 3/3, but it has evasive. So if they have evasive and they need to take care of it, it's going to take care of a lot of the evasives that they have, and it quests for 3. So it's a focal point. Like, you have to get rid of Ray. You have to get rid of him. Going on to the next, we have Bodyguard. Bodyguard is really good, again, just because of the fact it gets to help your board state. And a lot of Bodyguards have big butts. And so in this case, you have like Maximus, which is 4/5 bodyguard, but also gives support. Really good bodyguard, along with like, if you know, Goofy is a 3/6, big, even bigger butt. So like Goofy's really good in here too. You have the Prince, which is coming from Rise of the Floodborn. This particular bodyguard is really, really good because it has resist. So technically its butt is a 4. So its willpower, instead of a 3, it's really a 4, because whatever damage you deal to it's going to do 1 less. And so you have to, I mean, I guess it can be more than a 4 even, because if you keep attacking it with things that cost 2, you're gonna have to attack into it multiple things. Now the 1 strength isn't amazing, but that's not what the point of this card is. It's to be a bodyguard and to have to take more damage, you know what I'm saying? So then we have Simba, which is just a really good card because it's a 2-drop and it's a 2/3, so there's not a lot of cards that can take care of this other than like the Captain Hook or Phil again in the first 2 turns. So it's going to take a little bit to take care of that Simba. And if you happen to pull a Lilo or a Maleficent or the new 2-drop, I forgot, Prince, I believe, or I forget, is it Arthur? That's a 2-drop 1/1 with that quest for 3. Like, the Simba can be really good to put out to help with the bodyguard and allow your characters to quest more, or require your opponent to use some sort of removal to get rid of them. So that's why bodyguard is really strong. So look out for those as well. Then we have Rush. Rush is really good because, again, board state is really important in this game. And when you have a card with Rush, a lot of times your opponent's just not thinking of Rush. They're not playing Ruby Amethyst Control, you know, where they just suspect Rafiki to be a card. It's something, you know, that could be on a player's mind, but they're not going to focus too much or worry too much about Rush. And so Rafiki, phenomenal. A 3-drop, yes, it's uninkable, but it's a 3/3. It's taking out a lot of your opponent's cards. Queen of Hearts at a 2-drop inkable, that's phenomenal, and a lot of people aren't even going to be thinking about it because Queen of Hearts is new. It's from Rise of the Floodborn. So a 2/2 Rush, a lot of people are just not going to think of, because up until this point we haven't had a Rush character that is less than 3. That's less than a 3 cost is what I mean. And then you have cards like Zeus, right? Zeus is cool because he gets a Rush and he has Challenger for +4. I don't love that he then has 0 because he has just regular 0 strength. I don't love that, but he does quest for 2, so that makes up for it for a little bit. But I would prefer like a Rafiki in this point, probably a Queen of Hearts as well because of the ink factor. But then Zeus is another good one, and there's other Rush cards that you could take as well. But these are 3 cards that I really like specifically. Moving on, you have Resist, which is strictly in Rise of the Floodborn. So if it's a Chapter 1 draft, or if you're doing a mix like I'm going to be doing for Sealed, then, you know, you're not going to see this. But if you get a Cinderella, I think that's guaranteed. There's a lot of cards that's just like, if you get them, you're obviously taking those, right? And Cinderella is one of those. It's just phenomenal. What do I have to really say? I mean, Resist, any damage dealt to him is reduced by 2, which is just crazy. You pretty much, if we're talking about Chapter 1, there's not a single there's not a single meta card, I should say, that takes out Cinderella in 1 hit, right? Even Maui does not take out Cinderella in 1 hit. So you need some sort of removal to take care of Cinderella. But I mean, there's new cards coming out, you know, you could support something that will help with that. Either way, resist 2 is phenomenal. Hercules is another really good one, a 6-3 with resist 2, really good. Again, you might see 3 and think, that's not a fat body, you know, a fat butt, I should say, but it's resist plus 2, so anything attacking him is going to take 2 less damage, plus he's a shift 4, so if you get another little Hercules, might be a good card to have. Cogsworth is really nice too, because he does have a fat butt quest for 2, and he gives ward to everyone as well as resist to your other characters. Or sorry, he doesn't give ward to everyone. He has ward, but he gives resist plus 1 to all your other characters. So he's a really high value card as well. Resist just in general is a really good keyword, and so I would keep that in mind when you're looking through your packs. Lastly, I want to go through 2 key cards that you need to get if you have. Now, I think Fairy Godmother is obvious. It's like, oh, she's a legendary from the new set. You want to get those. You want to just collect them in general. But, I mean, come on. A shift 2, whenever this character quests, your characters gain Challenger +3, and when this character is banished in a challenge, return this card to your hand. So any character that you attack with, that you challenge with while Fairy Godmother is on the board, gets +3 strength when it's challenging, and it returns to your hand when it's banished. That's ridiculous, you know. But then you come to like Dr. Facilier, which a lot of people, you know, they pass up on. Like I got passed up on it on my most recent draft that I went 3-0 for. And it's the last 2 drafts that I went to, I had Dr. Facilier, went 3-0, and he was by far the winner of that, you know, the MVP of my deck. It's just because you can play Dr. Facilier, you don't have to quest with him. That's a big thing. With these cards, you have to have some sort of removal to get rid of them if you don't quest. You have to. Well, I guess now you can do like Cinderella, play a song, and then you can attack a readied character. That's just not going to happen very much right now. You know, there's another big card called, I think it's called Pick a Fight or Ready to Fight. I forget. It has Wreck-It Ralph on it. And it's basically, it's a 2-drop uninkable, I believe. You play it, you can challenge a ready character. So you have cards that could do something to Dr. Facilier when he's readied. It's gonna be really hard to come into a situation like that. Most cases, you're gonna want to keep him readied until you know you're safe. Then you can quest for 3, and it puts your opponents in a really tough spot, because if they quest, you're going to challenge with their characters, which are just going to go back in your hand to play. And especially with like a play like Rafiki, who has Rush, he attacks into something, he dies, goes back to your hand, you play him again, you attack again to kill the thing, or whatever the case is phenomenal. Or with like Prince Eric, who's an uninkable 4, whenever he challenges a character and is banished, that character is also banished. So he can hit into Surfer Stitch. He'll die because he's a 3/3, so he'll die, but he'll go back to your hand because of Facilier. Then you get to play Prince Eric again, which is just going to cause your opponent to be scared to quest, because they know with their big butts, Prince Eric is just going to challenge into him. They're going to die, and then Prince Eric's going to go back to the hand. So it puts, and then you can quest with your characters, and they know that, sure, I can go ahead and attack them, but they're just going to go back to his hand, and then he's going to play them, and then if I quest, he's going to attack me, and if they die, they're going to go back to his hand. I don't know if I'm speaking too fast, or if you guys are really understanding how ridiculous that kind of combo is, but basically, at the end of the day, what I'm saying is, if you see these 2 cards, pick them up immediately, almost immediately. Facilier, I would just, like, in the first chapter, unless you got it enchanted, I almost just wouldn't take anything else. If you're trying to win draft, again, if you're trying to collect, obviously you do your thing, but Facilier just has way too much value in this type of format. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me. I mean, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you're interested in at least one of the 2. They're really fun. It's really good to build up your collection. It's a nice level playing field. You don't have to worry about getting the biggest decks that cost a fortune. You know, there's a lot of people in Magic and other games that just play only draft because they like that style of play, and it's refreshing, not playing the same thing all the time and whatnot. But that's gonna be all from me. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, subscribe, hit the notification button so you know when I come out with more videos. But with that being said, I hope you all have a very nice